blind millionaire dined alone. Until the maid's daughter revealed an unexpected transformation. Walter Hastings sat at the long, gleaming table in the grand dining room of his sprawling mansion. Silverware clinked against fine china, a symphony of loneliness echoing in the vastness around him. Each night, the same exquisite meal, the same empty conversations with the silence of his blindness. The world had become a blur of shadows and echoes, denying him the vibrant colors of life once filled with invention and excitement. He was a millionaire, celebrated in the bright lights of a world he could no longer see, yet each corner of his home served only as a reminder of the darkness that now enveloped him. It was in this darkened cocoon that Rosa, his loyal maid, ventured to introduce her daughter, Sofia. The moment Sofia stepped inside the mansion, her laughter lit up the air, a stark contrast to Walter's muted existence. Their initial conversations started tentatively, two souls navigating the unsteadiness of their vastly different worlds. Walter found solace in Sofia's enthusiasm, her stories about art, colors, shapes, the very things he could not perceive but yearned to rediscover. As she sketched, captured by a muse he could only imagine, Walter whispered ideas long buried under years of despair, igniting his dormant creativity in ways he had thought impossible. But a shadow loomed. The more time Walter spent with Sofia, the more he felt the disdain of his affluent friends, those who would scoff at mingling with the help. He could almost hear their whispers. "How gauche," they'd say, eyes rolling in judgment. Torn, Walter grappled with this reality. Should he abandon his friendship with Sofia to shield her from their scorn? Or would he risk the comfort of his wealthy circle for the artist who awakened something profoundly beautiful within him? As grand events approached, his nerves intensified. He was being pulled in two directions, his past clashing grotesquely against the rising tide of his future. In a pivotal moment, at an obligatory gala, the opulence of the surroundings suffocated him. The laughter felt hollow, heavy with the weight of judgment. Sofia's presence stirred something inside him, yet a niggling fear clutched at his throat. What if they turned on her, just as they had done to others in her position? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Walter's internal battle raged within him. The night of the gala approached, and he wrestled with an overwhelming sense of dread and exhilaration. Would he unveil Sofia's talent to an audience that might dismiss her as merely the help? Would he be ready to face the backlash he could almost taste? Standing by the full-length mirror, he recognized the haunting reflection of his dilemma. Was he truly prepared to peel back the layers of societal expectation and reveal the man he knew he could be? As he grappled with this choice, a suffocating pressure enveloped him. Sofia's energy surrounded him, yet he felt anchored in uncertainty. With the weight of the world pressing upon his shoulders, Walter was poised at the edge of a precipice. Would he take the leap into the unknown, or retreat once more into the shadows? The answer lay just beyond reach, a haunting whisper of possibility waiting to be embraced. The gala loomed like a tempest, its winds stirring Walter's thoughts into a cyclone of fear and excitement. He could sense the harmony of the grand hall, silk gowns swishing, polished shoes gliding across the marble floor, the mingling aromas of decadent dishes mingling with expensive perfumes. Yet all this opulence felt like a gilded cage, trapping him in a world he could no longer embrace unashamedly. That evening, he hovered close to the entryway, panic gripping him in its icy grip. The thought of attending without Sofia gnawed at his insides. How could he stand among those who expected him to act like nothing had changed? He had grown weary of the masks they wore, each smile concealing a sneer, each laugh a veiled critique. But with Sofia at his side, the potential for his rebirth shimmered, almost blinding him with its allure. What if they scorn her? He thought, agony twisting in his gut. Walter took a deep breath, allowing the gentle whir of the ceiling fans to wash over him. He focused on the sound, steady and reassuring, as he drank in the flickering lights overhead, indicators of life and vibrancy he could no longer see but felt deeply. Suddenly, he recalled Sofia's laughter, a refreshing antidote to the chilling expectations that accompanied wealth. Her gift of sharing a world of color and emotion, despite his visual limitations, could break barriers that wealth had constructed around him. The gala presented an opportunity to reclaim his passion for art, to showcase Sofia's raw talent to an audience that held the keys to rejection or acceptance. But the stakes were higher than mere social standing. It was an exploration of his own identity and worth. As fear threatened to draw him further into his shell, he resolutely sought to peel back the layers of that fear, revealing a core yearning to connect with others on a level untouched by wealth. Why should I care what they think? He asked himself, voice rising above the chaotic chatter. Why allow their judgments to dictate my choices? His resolve shaped into a plan. He decided to find Sofia before the gala began. He had to let her know that he would stand tall by her side, ready to confront the naysayers. Yet, as he scanned the crowd, he spotted familiar faces, the tight-knit circle of his affluent friends, their laughter striking chords of unease within him. Walter's heart raced as he considered facing them with the truth of his companionship with Sofia. Will they accept her? The question haunted him, but another whispered back, what if they don't define you anymore? The ballroom suddenly felt constrictive. He turned on his heel and took several firm strides, breaking free from their magnetic pull. Each step forward was a step toward reclaiming his narrative, owning his story in this new chapter of life. In a far corner of the mansion, he found Sofia, her eyes lit with anticipation. The texture of her artistic aura seeped into his veins like an electric charge. He approached her, and with a heartfelt urgency, whispered, Sofia, will you showcase your work at the gala tonight? Her laughter danced in the air, harmonizing with his resolve. Really? But what if they don't take me seriously? Then we'll change their minds together, he replied, firmer than he felt. The words hung in the air between them, both a challenge and a promise. As the crowd began to trickle toward the ballroom, Walter held Sofia's hand, a grounding force against the tempest outside. Now, as they prepared to step into the grand room together, he understood. This was not just about the gala. It was about dismantling facades, challenging the status quo, and defining who he wanted to be in a world that had seen him only as his wealth. The moment had arrived for Walter to confront his friend's attitudes, but lurking beneath was another daunting fear. What if he failed? As they approached the threshold, he sensed his heartbeat quicken in sync with the crescendo of the gala within. But the question echoed louder. Was he ready to ignite change, not only for himself, but to inspire Sofia and defy the looming judgments? With one final breath, he stepped forward into the unknown with Sofia at his side, a quiet determination rising within him, yet uncertainty lingered like an uninvited guest. What awaited them behind those doors could shatter both their worlds or herald the dawn of a new legacy. Would he be the architect of his fate, or a mere spectator in a life defined by others? The air inside the gala was thick with anticipation as Walter and Sofia stepped across the threshold. The grand room unfolded before them. Laughter rippled through the crowd while crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over polished marble. Yet, Walter felt an instant disconnect, the mingling of festivity and apprehension colliding in his chest. With Sofia's presence beside him, he took a moment to steady himself, searching his mind for a strategy amidst the sensory overload. Focus on the art, he reminded himself. That was the key to breaking through the superficial conversations that surrounded them. He was here for a purpose, to elevate Sofia's work beyond the confines of judgment. The world of privileged banter and hidden critiques began to fade as he envisioned her brilliant pieces resonating with authenticity. What should I say? Sofia squeezed his hand, her pulse quickening with the thrill of possibility. What if they don't respond? Walter shifted his gaze to the gathering crowd. The group he had grown up with, wealthy patrons, art critics, and industry elites, would soon be introduced to a new dimension of art. "We'll tell them what they need to hear," he said. "It's their loss if they can't see the beauty in your vision." With newfound resolve, he led her across the floor, breaking from the walls that confined them. Faces turned as they approached, whispers sliding through tailored suits like hidden blades. Walter felt the weight of their scrutiny, the expectations heavy in the air, but he pressed forward, drawing strength from Sofia's unwavering gaze. When they finally reached the center, a hush settled over the gathering. He lifted his voice, shaky but determined. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to present an artist, someone whose talent speaks louder than any preconception." Sofia stepped into the spotlight, her confidence blossoming, an unexpected force arising from within. Walter took a deep breath, hoping to quell the storm inside. Sofia has the ability to connect with emotions you may not realize you feel. Every brushstroke is an invitation. As she unveiled her artwork, a collection of pieces reflecting raw emotion and vivid storytelling, murmurs shifted from skepticism to intrigue. Walter shifted from feeling like a mere accessory to a true partner, seeing Sofia's passion take command of the room. But then he glimpsed his friends, their faces frozen in confusion and disdain. In their eyes he read the glimmers of judgment slicing through the thick atmosphere. This is too common for their taste, he thought, anxiety gripping his core. For a moment, doubt seeped in. Would he truly be able to redefine his identity and support Sofia in a world eager to dismiss them both? Then he locked eyes with her, and an overwhelming sense of purpose surged through him. He had already begun to dismantle the cage that wealthy preconceptions had built around him. "Every piece tells a story," he continued, louder now, combating the whispers that threatened to drown him out. "Sofia's art invites reflection in a world that often overlooks the profound. But every critique is a chance for dialogue. Will you see art as merely beauty, or will you dare to let it change you?" The atmosphere shifted again. An electric charge pulsed through the crowd. Walter felt his heart race, clarity coiling within him. This was not simply about the gala, nor just about art. It was about ensuring their voices were heard, embracing vulnerability, and confronting privilege with bold authenticity. But amid this newfound power, doubt flickered in the back of Walter's mind. Was this breakthrough enough to transcend the old fears that haunted him? He glanced back at his friends, trying to decipher their reactions, and there lay another question. Would they ever understand the value of true artistry beyond their superficial world? Feeling the swell of determination, he realized he wasn't just fighting for Sofia. It was a fight for himself, to reclaim his narrative as an artist, a partner, and an individual. As the artwork captivated the crowd's attention, Walter sensed tension weaving through the air. Would tonight mark a turning point? Or would the echoes of their past pull him back into obscurity? Uncertainty loomed like a ghost, whispers spiraling through his mind. How would these changes affect his relationships? The night was far from over, and as he glanced at Sofia, a singular thought consumed him. What if uncovering their truths meant more than rejection? What if it meant redefining their place in the world entirely? They had stepped into the fire together, but the flames were only beginning to flicker. Walter stood at the heart of the gala, the weight of both expectations and newfound aspirations pressing down on him. The atmosphere buzzed, a swirling pit of intrigue and disdain, but the moment felt distinctly pivotal. He had spoken with conviction, and though the murmurs of judgment still floated around him, he sensed a tide turning. It was not just Sofia's art they were now contemplating. It was the courage he felt taking root within him, urging him to dismantle the barriers that had always held him back. Look at them, he thought, taking a moment to observe the myriad reactions flickering across the faces of the elite. Some appeared engaged, eyes gleaming with curiosity, while others harbored skepticism clouding their features. But that contrast stirred something profound in Walter. Each skeptical expression fueled an exhilarating defiance within. He was ready to dismantle the facade of superficiality that had defined much of his past interactions. As the crowd absorbed Sofia's art, he felt a semblance of clarity emerge. This wasn't merely about aiding her, or even fighting against the judgments of his friends. It was personal. He realized structural injustice ran deeper than artistry. It was entrenched in how he had navigated his own life, treading the line between expectation and desire. He recalled the life lessons his parents had imparted, the value of authentic engagement over appearances, and the strength found in vulnerability. Determined, he sought to engage with those who seemed intrigued, to transform their ambivalence into interest. He stepped closer to a small gathering where he spotted an older critic, someone who had once dismissed him as one of them. "What did you think of her work?" Walter ventured, his heartbeat quickening. The critic raised an eyebrow, surprise flickering in his eyes. "I didn't expect such depth," he admitted. "There's a raw honesty here." Walter sensed the shift in dialogue. "Exactly," he leaned in. "That's what art should evoke, a hunger for real connection, an exploration beyond what we're comfortable with." An exchange ensued. They spoke of textures, contrasts, and narratives embedded within each piece. Walter found himself lost in the conversation, recalling art history lessons he had tucked away long ago. As they dissected the emotional volleys within the artwork, a realization emerged. He was not just the artist's partner. He had as much a role as a thinker in his own right, an advocate for authenticity. Sofia's voice cut through the crowd, her passion igniting a spark that engulfed everyone. "Every piece reflects layers of pain and joy," she conveyed with a resonant tremor. "I invite you to peel those layers. Art is not just to behold. It's a dialogue seeking honesty." Watching her, Walter felt the distance between them, and yet it was a distance filled with shared ambition. Suddenly, the weight of their collective cause was palpable, an unstoppable force gathering momentum. He wanted to amplify her message, to instigate a challenge to their world's insular attitudes through the lens of her work. But what did that mean for how he would navigate his own life post-gala? As the evening wore on, light and energy swirled within him, yet shadows of doubt lingered. Could he find a way to integrate this new vision into his life, without sacrificing the parts of himself that had crawled out of a sheltered existence? Challenging conversations unhitching long-held beliefs might alienate him from familiar comforts. With every strong exchange he navigated, Walter found the urge to confront his friends growing. He wrestled with the realization that he would take a stand, not only for Sofia, but for the trajectory of his own life. He took a steadying breath, reminding himself that growth often came with discomfort. Then, at that moment, he spotted his closest friend across the room, watching intently. It dawned on him that this wasn't simply about Sofia, art, or their personal stakes. It was about vulnerability that demanded recognition, challenging the perceptions of those he held dear. Walter's heart raced as he approached his friend, ready to unveil this new understanding of courage. Would he meet acceptance or rejection? The weight of anticipation sank heavily on his shoulders. "Tonight, it's time for all of us to see the art in our lives," Walter began, a hint of defiance tangling with trepidation. But the words hung in the air like a dripping brush, waiting to paint over the expectations that had once constrained him. Would this declaration start a shift in their dynamics, or shatter connections he held too tightly? The moment danced on a precipice, and he wasn't certain which direction it would tip next. Walter inhaled deeply, feeling the moment stretch out before him like a canvas awaiting its brushstrokes. He watched the expression on his friend's face transform from curiosity to apprehension. This was the confrontation he had long avoided, a confrontation that stirred the long-buried desires for authenticity in his relationships. "Walter, what are you talking about?" his friend finally asked, frowning slightly as if he couldn't grasp the shift in their dynamic. "Art in our lives? This is about Sofia's talent, right? What does this have to do with me?" With that, the tension popped through the air like a struck match. Walter's heart raced as he considered each option, the diverging paths before him. He could retreat into the safety of their old dialogue, common interests and self-deprecating jokes. Or he could boldly traverse this unfamiliar territory, taking the risk that could unravel their long-standing friendship. "Honestly, it's about more than just art," he stammered, forcing the words out of a throat suddenly dry with anxiety. "It's about how we live, how we hide behind the roles we've chosen. I see people like us, successful yet suffocated by what we think we're supposed to be." Walter's passion burst forth, pulling him deeper into his resolve. Sofia's work isn't just pretty pictures. It's a reflection, a mirror that shows us our complacency. She calls for us to engage, to peel back the layers, and challenge ourselves. Don't you want more than the same mundane conversations? His friend's brow pinched further, uncertainty mingling with a hint of audacity as he squinted into the whirlwind of Walter's fervor. In those moments, Walter recognized a familiar battle welling within the other man's psyche. The fear of stepping into the unknown, a visceral response to change. But in that moment, Walter also glimpsed a chance for evolution, a shared desire to escape the strata that had defined their friendship for years. "Why now, though? Why here?" his friend posed, a defensive edge cracking through. "Because tonight illuminated something for me. We're not just passive observers, we're participants, and it is time I come to terms with that," Walter replied, his voice steadier now. "I don't want to be the person who hides in the shadows, who merely stands beside someone else's journey. I want to be present, to advocate. For Sofia, yes, but for myself." A pregnant pause hung between them, charged with confusion and possibility. Not far away, he noticed Sofia animatedly engaged with another art critic, her eyes shimmering with vibrant ideas. That flicker of creativity became an impulsive jolt of inspiration for him. "What are you scared of?" Walter pushed, a newfound urgency lighting his words. "Are you afraid of what others will think, or are you afraid of your own potential? This could be a chance to embrace who we are beyond what society has crafted us to be." For the first time, uncertainty danced across his friend's features, unearthing a sliver of vulnerability beneath the polished surface. Walter felt hope tingle at the edges of his consciousness, the prospect of transformation teetering on their conversation. Then, just like that, the spell broke. His friend took a step back, conflicted, yet intrigued. "I don't know if I can just throw everything away and embrace whatever this is. What if it doesn't lead anywhere?" "Then at least we'll know," Walter responded, pride swelling within him. "What if we're stronger together? What if we support each other in stepping away from these cages we've built?" The conversation shifted as outside voices surrounded them, weaving in and out of their awareness. The hum of the gala returned, distanced yet hauntingly present. Walter asked himself whether he could actually facilitate this transformation, not just for himself, but also for the friend who had been an anchor in his life. Did he have the strength to pull them both into this new realm of honest vulnerability? As he tried to gauge his friend's reaction, Walter felt exhilarated, yet daunted. The status quo was unraveling, tight knots of connection loosening with potential for genuine transformations. But the question loomed larger than his personal stakes. What if, in asserting this newfound vision, he unintentionally alienated the very allies he sought to uplift? A ripple of anticipation washed over him. Whatever the outcome of this moment, Walter understood he was about to step off the precipice into a vast unknown. Would his plea for authenticity work to their advantage, or lead to an irrevocable disconnect? Without a ready answer, determination surged in Walter's chest as the night unfolded, drawing him deeper into this uncharted territory. Could this be a rebirth of sorts, not just for him, but for his friend as well? Whatever the consequences, the remnants of his old self would continue to shed, each breath fueling a passionate resolve. He turned to face the pulse of the room, ready to confront whatever awaited them next. Just as he gathered his thoughts, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. Another trusted friend. Someone who had often dismissed the very notions Walter now embraced. Could this friendship too be tested in the wake of his transformation? Walter braced himself for the impending encounter, knowing this would push him further than ever before. Walter steadied himself as he prepared to meet the approaching figure, a cocktail of anticipation and apprehension churning within him. He watched as Brian, a longtime friend, threaded his way through the crowd, oblivious to the shifts in Walter's worldview. Brian had always embraced the familiar comforts of their lives, successful careers, predictable banter, yet a stubborn refusal to engage with deeper questions. "Hey," Brian called, his voice breaking through the din. "What are you two talking about?" The half-grin plastered on his face hinted at the playful jibe that usually accompanied their exchanges. Walter swallowed hard, acutely aware of the stakes involved in this moment. Could he really articulate the internal upheaval within to someone who had often scoffed at such notions? "We were just talking about growth, Brian," he managed, his voice surprisingly calm amidst the roar of laughter and clinking glasses surrounding them. Brian raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched into his features. "Growth. Come on, you don't mean to say you've joined the artsy-fartsy crowd, do you?" He chuckled, drawing a few momentary glances from nearby partygoers. Walter's pulse quickened. This wasn't merely a punchline. There was an underlying challenge in Brian's tone. Could he break through the satirical fortress his friend had erected around himself? "Actually, I've been thinking a lot about how often we settle for what's comfortable," Walter replied, disregarding the insensitivity in Brian's approach. "You know, about how we let fear dictate our choices." The mirth faded from Brian's expression, replaced by a fleeting look of inquiry. "Fear? Really? I thought you were fine with how things are. Isn't that the point of all this?" Walter's eyes darkened with realization. If he was going to carve out a new path, he needed to stare down not just Brian's skepticism, but his own unresolved doubts as well. "I thought so too," he confessed, heart thudding with a cocktail of courage and uncertainty. "But maybe it's time to question that. Maybe there's more to us than just cruising through life." The transformation in their dynamic crackled with intensity, the weight of Walter's words settling heavily around them. Brian crossed his arms, inspecting Walter as if he were a puzzle to be solved. The obstacles that once defined their friendship now hovered between them like a fragile thread, one that could either snap under pressure or be woven into a new fabric of understanding. "Are you really saying you want to drop everything? The job? The ease of our lives? Why rock the boat?" Brian's disbelief was palpable, mingling with an undertone of genuine curiosity. "Because the boat has become a cage," Walter replied, voice imbued with conviction. "We're treading water, Brian. I can't live like that anymore. I'd rather dive into the depths of uncertainty than continue skimming the surface." A silence hung between them, yet Walter could feel the ground shifting beneath their feet. He understood that every word he spoke might echo back in unpredictable ways. Brian's face contorted with a mix of frustration and contemplation, revealing the cracks in a worldview he clung to for stability. "Listen, I get that this art stuff has impacted you," Brian finally conceded, his tone less mocking, more serious. "But what's the end game here? Is it worth jeopardizing the stable lives we've built?" Walter hesitated, questioning whether his aspirations could withstand the heat of such scrutiny. What was it worth if it felt like stepping into the void, dragging others along with him? "It's worth everything," he said, his voice firm. "I'm done waiting for approval. I want to be part of my story. No, I want to write my own script. He could see doubt creeping back into Brian's demeanor, the familiar shield re-emerging. Yet, a glimmer of recognition sparked in his friend's eyes, betraying the promise of something more profound, bubbling beneath his surface of normalcy. Would this moment serve as a catalyst, breaking open the routine that suffocated both of them? Walter squared his shoulders, preparing for the fallout, ready to embrace whatever consequences followed this admission of truth. Just then, the celebratory ambiance shifted, a wave of enthusiasm sweeping through the crowd as Sofia reappeared, her presence invigorating the atmosphere. Walter pulled in a deep breath. All I ask is for you to think about it. Can we even begin to find out together? Brian's eyes shifted towards Sofia, then back to Walter, a tension lingering as the walls continued to blur between their past comfort and new potential. What would this pivotal conversation reveal about their choices or the solidarity they once shared? Walter could sense that he was standing on the edge of transformation, but would it falter or flourish in the wake of unspoken fears? The sound of laughter crashed into their earnest dialogue, the stakes rising as they moved deeper into their uncharted territory, leaving behind their comfortable routines for a confrontation with their true desires. As Walter sought to turn the tide of their relationship, he couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the real test awaited them just beyond the horizon. Would they embrace this raw, unpredictable journey, or retreat to the safety of what was? Walter's heart raced as he stood between Brian's unwavering skepticism and the flickering hope of transformation. The rhythm of the soiree around them faded into an ethereal haze, the voices and laughter merging into indistinct murmurs. His mind whirled, oscillating between the fiery ambition ignited in him and the suffocating doubt that crept just beyond the periphery of his resolve. I need to know if you're in this with me, he urged, breaking the lull that had forged a heavy mantle over their conversation. His voice carried a gravity he hadn't anticipated, one that made Brian blink, as if waiting for an explanation that could validate this existential pivot. Walter studied Brian's face, searching for signs of understanding. The image of his friend, always pragmatic and comfortably entrenched in the familiar, now seemed fragmented, each feature marked by apprehension and curiosity. Look, I know the stakes are high, Walter continued, a hint of desperation seeping into his words. But staying in our comfort zone is no longer an option. It doesn't challenge us, it confines us. The tension rippled between them, almost palpable. The space felt charged with unspoken fears, the atmosphere thick with the weight of their shared history. Brian's gaze faltered, suggesting a dawning awareness that perhaps their lives, though filled with achievements, lacked a deeper meaning. It's uncertain, Walter. You're talking about upheaval, about pursuing an ideal that might not even lead anywhere. Brian responded. His voice dropped to a near whisper, an uneasy acceptance washing over him. What if it all comes crashing down? Walter's determination firmed. Then at least I know I fought for it. Wouldn't you rather risk it all for something real than continue living a story that feels increasingly authored by someone else? We're not just numbers in our professions, Brian. We're meant to create, to sharpen who we are. I don't know if I can just jump, Brian admitted, the sincerity of his tone cutting through the tension like a knife. I've got responsibilities, plans laid out. There's a certain security I can't just toss away. Walter sighed, absorbing Brian's reluctance as a reflection of his own fears, yet still holding on to hope for a shared journey. Perhaps the conversation could awaken a sense of adventure within his friend, spark a flame where there was once only a flicker. In life, we're often told to play it safe, but growth demands discomfort. It's like lifting weights. Without the strain, there's no strength. Brian chuckled, albeit without the usual levity. Are you comparing life to a gym class? Maybe, Walter smiled. But I mean it. Change requires us to work at it, sometimes wrestle with hesitation. The results, though, can be liberating. Just then, Sofia wove through the crowd again, her aura pulsating with contagious energy. She seemed an embodiment of the unapologetic pursuit of passion. Walter watched how she engaged others, her laughter a melody, a sound that drew people in. A stark contrast to the internal battle he faced. "Look at her," he said, nodding toward Sofia. "She's chasing after what makes her feel alive. Can't you see how that infectious energy is sparking joy in others? You can feel it, can't you?" Brian's eyes flickered to Sofia, then returned to Walter, caught in a mental crossfire. The shadows of doubt wavered momentarily as Brian felt the tremors of change ripple through him. Walter pressed on. "What if we're enduring this uneasy moment so that we can emerge with more? We can reimagine how we navigate life, together, as friends chasing our truths instead of clinging to what simply pays the bills." Silence fell again. Only this time, it didn't come with the suffocating heaviness of before. It lay between them like a bridge, waiting to be crossed. Brian stared into the distance, lost in a swirl of possibilities Walter could only begin to grasp. "Maybe, just maybe, I need to be okay with the urge for more. And learn from that," Brian finally muttered, his voice trailing off with a hesitant tinge of optimism. Before Walter could respond, the noise around them crescendoed. Celebratory shouts erupted nearby as a toast was proposed. The sudden onslaught of sound reminded him of how easily life could distract one from necessary confrontations. As he glanced at Brian, he felt their friendship teetering on the precipice of transformation, searching for a clear path amidst the chaos. "It's time for us to confront what we truly want, isn't it?" Brian's eyes locked on Walter's, solidifying the pivotal choice resting between them. "Are you ready to face that together?" Walter challenged, feeling the massive weight of possibility unfold around them. In the distance, the laughter and celebration continued to blossom. The noise no longer felt dull, but vibrant, a siren call to embrace the tumult of change. What would they discover about themselves if they dared to tackle their fears head-on? Walter could almost see the impending horizon emerging, and with a stir of excitement coursing through him, he knew the leap into the unknown was fast approaching. Would they take that plunge, or would the safety of the shore tether them forever? The moment hung in the air like a tightly coiled spring, charged with anticipation. Walter's heart thudded in sync with his thoughts, a whirlwind of emotions feeding his determination. He hadn't fully grasped the magnitude of his own desire to evolve until now, while Brian wrestled with his idealism and practicality. "Let's promise ourselves one thing," Walter finally spoke, as clarity pierced through the fog of hesitation. "No matter how this turns out, we owe it to ourselves to explore what lies beyond our current lives. The thrill of risk, Brian. Don't you want to see what that feels like?" Brian's face shifted, clouds of indecision still shrouding his features. His internal battle reflected on his brow, revealing a glimpse of the tumult brewing within. Walter recognized that this moment would define both their journeys. The urgency to act against fear surged in him like a tidal wave. With a sense of urgency, Walter proposed, "How about we set a date? A specific day when we'll take our first step towards these ambitions we're talking about. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be something manageable, like attending that workshop on entrepreneurship we've mentioned." The prospect of action seemed to anchor Brian's wavering resolve. "A single day?" he questioned, reluctant but intrigued. "Just like that?" "Yes, just like that. What have we got to lose? This is about reclaiming our narrative. It's time to stop merely existing." Walter felt his adrenaline spike, enabling him to articulate the burgeoning vision. He searched for Brian's eyes, hoping they would finally reflect the glimmer of shared ambition. "Okay," Brian acquiesced, but his voice trembled as another layer of hesitation permeated their conversation. "But what if we fail? What if we jump and land in an abyss?" Walter shook his head. "Then we'll learn, grow, adapt. Failure is part of the journey. If we let fear dictate our path, we resign ourselves to mediocrity. I know I'll be there for you, and vice versa." There's strength in sharing this adventure. A flicker of courage ignited in Brian's gaze. You really believe this could change us? I believe it has to, Walter affirmed, a kernel of conviction nesting in his throat. The recording of their shared dialogues from the past played in his mind, laced with the undertones of unrealized potential. This isn't just about pursuing dreams. It's about revealing our best selves. We have to lean into our discomfort. Just then, Sofia returned, her presence radiating vitality. You two deep in thoughts? Or plotting world domination? She teased, a playful smile dancing on her lips. Walter found himself admiring her ability to embody life, to grasp it with both hands and shake out its vibrancy. Something like that, Walter replied, glancing at Brian with a renewed sense of partnership. We've decided to commit to our ambitions. Sofia raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Really? When's the first step? Walter and Brian exchanged knowing glances, a pact forming between them. Next week, Brian answered, a slight tremor cloaking his voice. Time to put our best foot forward, Walter added, fully aware of the magnitude of their decision. The evening wore on, filled with laughter and camaraderie, yet an undercurrent of anticipation buzzed just beneath the surface. Walter savored the moment. He could almost taste the sweet tang of ambition, the scent of transformation lacing the air. But the night was woven with uncertainty. As Brian spoke animatedly about possible ideas, Walter couldn't shake the nagging thought that while one step could lead to growth, it could also lead to unforeseen challenges. What lay ahead was unknown territory, fraught with the potential for struggles he hadn't yet foreseen. An overwhelming urge to prepare surged within him. While their words suggested confidence, deep down lurked an acknowledgement of vulnerability. What resources would they need? What skills had they yet to uncover? Just as he contemplated logistics, Sofia interjected, I can help if you need it. I know people who have turned their passions into careers. Her sincerity rang clear, and Walter felt a swell of optimism, as though fate had taken an interest in their journey. Thank you, he replied gratefully. We might just take you up on that. As the night unfolded, Walter found himself mentally drafting plans, sketching pathways of possibility. The reckoning began to settle in. Self-doubt mingled with hope. How far would he be willing to elaborate on his latent capabilities? Would he uncover strengths he had buried beneath layers of societal expectations? Still, amidst the excitement and challenges ahead, a sense of urgency brewed stronger than ever within him. Brian, Walter said quietly, like a thunderclap, rising above the din of laughter and conversation. What if we not only pursue our ambitions but also confront our greatest fears? Together? Are you ready for that? Brian hesitated, the weight of Walter's proposition reverberating in the air. Silence hung between them, a liminal space waiting to be filled as the truth of each man's choices loomed closer. The moment crystallized. Their future remained an unwritten page at the edge of that unknown depth. Walter focused on Brian's face, searching for clarity, realizing the essence of what they were about to embark on would demand even more than they had discussed. Would they truly grasp their potential? Would it be enough to redefine who they were? The choices lay barely concealed beneath the surface, beckoning them to dive deeper than the superficiality that had previously ensnared them. Next week, Walter echoed quietly, but the echo of uncertainty slipped through his thoughts, tugging on his determination. What awaited them? Success, failure, or something unimaginably transformative, was still obscured in the shadows of possibility. The week crawled by like an agonizing, slow-motion reel, each hour stretching into eternity. Walter filled his days with restless energy, sketching a rough outline of business ideas that fluttered through his mind like moths to a flame. Each scribble in his notebook served as a reminder of both potential and the terrifying depths of uncertainty. He had never envisioned himself as an entrepreneur, let alone as someone who could effectively lead. Yet now, the first poignant stirrings of ambition felt like a siren song, pulling him toward an unimaginable horizon. Despite the exhilaration that accompanied planning, Walter's mind often spiraled, tainted with self-doubt. What qualified him to step into this world? Each time he gazed at blank pages, he wrestled with questions that stung like thorns. Did he possess the competence? What if they stumbled at the first hurdle? The looming fear of expected failure clutched tightly at his throat. In moments of quiet, he revisited thoughts of the past, dredging up memories of classroom lectures, failed projects, and the safe zones from which he had always operated. These reflections felt like chains, dragging him back into his lived reality. It became abundantly clear that this journey required more than just a leap. It demanded a grappling with innate insecurities. Determined to rise above the remnants of hesitation, Walter made a promise to himself. He would confront these ghosts. On the day of the workshop, the sun poured down like molten gold, invigorating the air with potential. Nerves twisted in Walter's stomach as he stood in front of the door, the noise of chatter spilling into the quiet of his thoughts. Brian appeared beside him, equally pale, both grappling with the same undercurrent of fear. "What if they laugh at our ideas?" Brian whispered, breaking the tension of silence. "Then we learn," Walter replied, their shared anxiety morphing into a simmering resolve. There was no turning back now. Each challenge had to be met head-on, and the workshop was merely the beginning. They entered, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. Laughter, energy, and a distinct cadence of ambition filled the room. As they settled into their uncomfortable plastic chairs, facing an array of unfamiliar faces, Walter's heartbeat increased. The speaker, a dynamic entrepreneur with a booming voice, began to share raw stories of failures that preceded successes, recounting harrowing yet enlightening moments of confrontation. Walter leaned forward, his heart racing, captivated by their authenticity. Amidst the clinking of coffee mugs and rapid note-taking, the host posed a compelling question. "What holds you back from realizing your ideas?" The inquiry hung in the air, permeating the thoughts of every participant. Walter felt a torrent of emotions surge. This was it, the threshold where personal development transformed into necessity. Within himself, a battle brewed as he realized the answer was not just fear. It was the fear of vulnerability. Were they ready to not only put ideas on the table, but also to confront the fragile emotions underlying those ambitions? As the workshop progressed, Walter and Brian formed connections with like-minded individuals, slowly peeling back layers of inadequacy that they had so tightly wrapped around themselves. For every personal story shared, they unearthed bits of their own authenticity. Walter found himself stunned by the enthusiasm of others, realizing that, behind each facade of confidence, lay similar anxieties, doubts, and dreams. The day melted into a blur of insights and interactions, and before he knew it, the finale of the workshop approached. They were invited to pitch their ideas, short, imperfect bursts of ambition that had brewed within. Walter's pulse surged as he faced the small crowd. His breath caught in his chest, the weight of vulnerability pressing heavily upon him. Then, curiosity awakened a flicker of courage. "Here goes nothing," he thought, plunging into the unknown. He opened his mouth, ready to unveil the dreams he had guarded fiercely. With every word, he felt something shift deep within, a newfound courage triumphing over fear, inexorably transforming the very essence of who he thought he was. This moment could redefine his trajectory, not just professionally, but personally. As Walter stood before the crowd, trembling yet resilient, life pulsated around him, each beat echoing determination. But just as he prepared to take the plunge into that uncertain, thrilling abyss of conversation, a shadow loomed, a figure, and a question. Brian's hesitant voice quivered beside him, cutting through the air with raw apprehension. "What if we end up together closer to failure than success?" Walter's heart raced, both from excitement and the anxiety of the unknown tethering them. Would his answer inspire Brian, or shut him down? In that pivotal moment, Walter realized the core of their journey wasn't mere ambition, but the ability to accept imperfection. The thoughts crystallized in his mind as if all their shared fears coalesced into a singular truth. Success isn't guaranteed, but growth thrives in challenges, he said, his voice steady, too powerful to merely whisper. But the question remained. Would they leap together, or would they succumb to their doubts once again? The moment expanded, carrying the weight of potential, as they both stood on the brink of something monumental. As Walter stood at the podium, he felt an electrifying pulse radiate through him. The balance of uncertainty and exhilaration coiled tight within him. The crowd's eyes were upon him, silently urging him to speak his truth. With steady resolve, he dove into the pitch, his voice resonating with newfound confidence. "I have an idea," he began, "that centers on creating an art collective, a space where artists like Sofia can showcase their work without judgment, where the narrative of every piece is celebrated, not shunned. This is about transforming art appreciation into a dialogue that pushes boundaries." As he spoke, Walter sensed a distinct shift. There was no longer a taint of doubt. The shadows that had chased him dissipated. Every word ignited a flame of enthusiasm in his heart, and the vision of possibility unfolded before him. He saw a future where the beauty of diversity thrived, where every artist's voice mattered, and where vulnerability transformed into strength. Applause erupted at the end of his pitch, a wave of acceptance washing over him. But in the swell of applause, his eyes sought Brian, whose expression held an intricate maze of emotions: pride, anxiety, and perhaps a glimmer of shared resolve. Had this truly ignited a spark in him? After Walter finished, Brian followed suit. While initially hesitant, he poured out his own vision that intertwined their journeys, an idea for mentorship for local artists, where experienced creators could nurture and support the ambitions of those starting out. Walter watched the metamorphosis unfold before him as he witnessed Brian step into the light, guided by the same sense of daring they had both yearned for. By the time the workshop concluded, the atmosphere brimmed with excitement and camaraderie. Attendees exchanged details, eager to collaborate and explore avenues they had never considered before. As Walter connected with fellow artists, an unshakable sense of belonging began to anchor him. In the days that followed, Walter and Brian established a menagerie of connections. The mentorship program blossomed alongside the art collective idea, and their vision expanded as they learned to lean on each other for support. They rallied their energies to uncover themes in their projects rooted in authenticity and resilience, giving life to what had previously only flickered in their imaginations. The experience embodied a fundamental truth. A metamorphosis had taken place within. Walter realized he was no longer solely defined by societal expectations or wealth. He had become a collaborator, a genuine creator ready to forge his path. Each small success they achieved propelled his confidence further skyward. Recognition from peers began to flow in. They were no longer beneath the judgment of their past, but stood tall as partners in creation. One evening, as Walter strolled through an art gallery showcasing Sofia's work, he spotted familiar faces scattered throughout the space. Friends who once avoided engaging with art began to speak openly about feelings ignited by her pieces. Laughter bubbled around him, the crowd brimming with an enthusiasm that felt electric. More than that, for Walter, it felt like the consolidation of his journey, a physical manifestation of overcoming the fears that once held him hostage. As he turned to Sofia, who stood nearby, the spark of inspiration in her eyes resonated deep within him. He realized this venture was as much hers as it was theirs. The world was slowly reshaping around them. Through the courage to step away from the shadows of old friendships and forge new bonds based on authenticity, he had unlocked not just the potential for personal growth, but for collective elevation. In that moment of clarity, Walter recognized he had finally achieved solid confidence in his identity as an artist, a friend, and a collaborator. The chains of judgment had crumbled, replaced by an empowering network that would support him moving forward. Now established in his new position, he felt an unwavering acknowledgement from the community for the talents and passions he had so long hidden. Just before the evening drew to a close, Walter made his way to the gallery's microphone. The crowd hushed in anticipation. "Tonight, we celebrate art and each other," he proclaimed, the words flowing forth with resonance. "Let us embrace the truths reflected in these works and step beyond our fears together. Art isn't just about creation, it's about connection." As applause filled the air, Walter found himself beaming. He was no longer the blind millionaire dining alone. He was a man transformed, satisfied, fulfilled, recognized, and focused on a path forged by collaboration, authenticity, and boldness. And in that moment, a gentle realization seeped into his consciousness. True wealth was never in the coins of his fortune. It was in the depth of his connections, the support for one another in vulnerability, and the beauty discovered in every brushstroke of his journey. This was his moment. Now it's your moment. You need to subscribe instantly to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support our mission. Comment below your reactions and theories about this transformational ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait. Even one more second to show your support for personal overcoming stories. Join us on this incredible journey.